did. What's up, everybody? I'm back. It's Mark Mack here on the Hump. Happy Hump Day. What's up? You like that commercial? You ever seen that commercial, Adam? That old Hump Day commercial?
I haven't, man, but it made me feel like we're introducing. I'm sorry, man.
No, that's okay. But everybody knows it's Wednesday. It's the Hump Day of the week, right? No matter where you are in America or in Australia, it's Wednesday, but it's Thursday where you are. So it was yesterday. Right, which I think is awesome about this because it's all about Wednesday, and you're actually not even Wednesday anymore. You were Thursday, so you can give us a really great hack as to how you got over yesterday and are feeling as good and looking as good as you do today. So look at this guy; he looks like he's outside. He's got a tan, and as you all know, I'm in the upper Northeast, so I am pale. I have no vitamin D going on right now, and that's why I'm dressed appropriately for 38 degrees outside. But welcome to the Hump, everybody. This is episode 3, SDR Insider bringing you the Hump this week. I'm Mark Mack, and I brought all the way from, I don't even know, 20,000 miles away and 16 and a half hours. I just learned it's 9 o'clock in the morning on Thursday. It's Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving, Adam, and thank you for joining us here on the Hump. What's going on, man?
Thanks so much for having me, Mark. Long time in the making. I know we've had chats over a few years in a few different chat groups, and man, I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, so I know that Adam and his partners have been working on some things called CRO School and a couple of other things that we're going to get into today. We've got some really great topics to talk about, but I want to give my man Adam just a few moments to introduce himself to my audience and anybody else who will be listening to this after the fact. Go for it.
Thanks, man. Yeah. So for people that aren't across it, my name is Adam Manderovich. Long time ex-head of sales, CRO. That all started with sales development, and I was fortunate enough to see what sales development was prior to all of the split outs and specialization of those roles. I was able to kind of use a lot of that, which kind of leaked into what marketing should be, to really do some heavy lifting across industry sector and use that as like the piggyback to get all of those head of sales roles across different financial sectors and different markets across Australia, New Zealand, and the United States. And I made that methodology of those hard feedback loops called closed circuit selling. Started talking about it in 2019. People thought I was nuts. I kind of wore the wrath of that for nearly 5 years now. I think in the last year or so, people are like, hang on, what he's saying is you go to the market, you validate, you collect the information, you build a winning formula, you go back to them, you say, could we do this? And then you put the deals on, and then what happens, right? That's all I was saying. And now they're kind of getting it. And then I came across the wizardry of the guys in Coogee in Sydney called the B2B Playbooks, George Kudonatis. And we decided, is it possible to build all my sales functional fundamentals across the funnel with a demand marketing engine? And that then birthed a mini series, which I believe we're going to give away a book at the end of this. And that became CRO School, because we realized that we were building something that was monumentous, like about 200 pages of manual script of interlocking every single department, but not only that, but how to do it, how to apply it, and the templates and the tools. And that became CRO School, and that goes live tomorrow our time. And we've got some pretty big companies in the pilot version of that. And people will see a whole lot more of that very soon. But the people that have already seen it have said, how have you built an MBA style program for every single action across the funnel? And then that will obviously then spur into maybe pushing back into sales development and what it should be, because people will then realize from those live examples how there's a lower barrier to entry by gathering information instead of hardcore closing those people, which is what I've always been about, which is how you and I started discussing, I think 3 years ago when I was still in New Zealand. So I started building that, which first was like an iteration, was like helping companies do venture capital stuff. And that was through a company called Disruptor, and then that morphed into closed circuit selling, and that morphed into now pushing everyone into a school learning version. Yeah.
I like it. I think it's if you can give people quick bursts of high level data and information and strategic thinking and whatever else it'll go into, we'll dial into it a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, sounds like again, you're just building that recipe, right? Like you said, recipe to be able to manage a business through all those functions. A CRO, see, I think that's quite interesting, and that should have been a topic. I should have just broken it really deep down to this, but there's a lot of talk about what people think the CRO should be responsible for. So before I get into these wonderful topics that I actually outlined, why don't you just answer me that? Tell me what do you really truly believe a CRO is supposed to be responsible for, and what, maybe at a high level, I know we only have an hour, so what at a high level do you think should be their 3 top priorities?
Okay, hang on. The first way that I'll answer this will be what the market thinks in terms of our like echo chamber of people that are probably listening to both of our audiences, right? What the market thinks CRO is not what CRO is. So the CRO needs to have commercial oversight of marketing, outbound sales, customer success, and commercial oversight. So with that needs to be like the right-hand person to advisory to the CEO, right? What we're seeing at market in terms of CRO and what's been watered down over time is people that have come up through sales development, and that's the only channel that they understand. That then became like a different version of a CRO, which is the title with none of the fruit. So in the perfect world, the CRO has commercial oversight over all of those departments and has intrinsic understanding of what their functionalities are and where the hard feedback loops exist. But that's not what we're seeing at market. And I guess that's part of why when George and I created this, we wanted to call it that, to bring it all back to that.
Maybe to bring those people who are currently in those titled roles to the school and really teach them how to run the business, and gain acceptance in those in the company. I bet you there's probably a good percentage that all of a sudden these CROs are thrown in at a certain time, maybe the wrong time, and they're sitting around and people are looking at them like, who the fuck are you, right? Like, what are you doing? Because and they look them up and they're like, okay, this is where all these people are from. They're from the marketing side. Oh, he's a CMO here and a CMO there. Right. But what is that? Great. Okay. Has he managed revenue? Has he or she, fired a chief operating officer? No.
Yeah. So
things like
they have
that.
to understand all of that, Mark, as you said. And I guess the bullet points there are is that they don't. Generally, they don't. So there are CRO programs out there that say they're doing what we're doing, but if you look under the hood, it just looks like a generic sales development program with no commercial oversight over the other departments, and that screams to me a red flag. Is you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that there's that old saying? I don't know if you've heard it. That people who can't teach, and like, and yet the trade, on the trade side, I'm not talking about in university. I'm talking about on the trade side, like you, like you're you're an operator. You come from the operating world. You've been there, and now you could teach it even to the people who are in the role doing it right now and have no clue. And the irony is I wonder who's teaching it actually in the university.
I'd love to.
Not that I want to go to university and start teaching people how to do sales, but sales 101,
Hmm.
knocking on the door. That's what I'm
Yeah, yeah,
talking about.
yeah, yeah.
That's where I came from, man. I came from my first job out of school was a multi-level marketing company, and we sold cruises, booze cruises, and I would run around New York City hospitals and try
Hmm.
to get into these admin areas and like talk to all these secretaries. That's what we called them back then.
Hmm.
And they, sell them the booze cruise, right? Like, hey, you got on the city cruise right here, $25. Just write me a check. Here's the little slip. Give them a slip, take the check, run away,
Hmm.
right? And I got chased down by security, and I played chase with them for a little while by pressing the elevator buttons and banging the
Hmm.
doors like I'm going upstairs, and I went downstairs, and I literally had check in my hand while they were running down the corridor, like holding their. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm just soliciting.
Hmm. Hmm. I love it.
Yeah. So let's get into this. Let's get into these topics because honestly, I like to think about when I came into this industry, like in the tech sales world and the communities and all the stuff that see that's it's morphed into these days. What really drew me in is this weird sort of like SDR AE model, and I said, "What do you mean?" And then like I started following guys like Justin Michael and I don't know, a bunch of other people, anyways. And so they were like telling us about. All I can hear was like, "Oh, I don't want to use the phone," and this handoff was horrible, and customers are getting pissed off,
Hmm.
and people getting rushed into a demo, and like, demo what?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it's
man.
like, yo, let me show you my what. Well, hold on, Sally, buy me a drink first, right?
Hmm.
Like, so and then it's like, who's doing that? Oh, the SDR. Oh, okay. And then they pass it to the AE, right? And then the AE gets on a call and he does a discovery, maybe well or not. And then he gets a sales engineer and then they do a demo. And I like the touch point component of it, right? I think
Hmm.
if anything that I drew that I see that I looked at that was the most positive thing initially was like so many touch points, but not so many touch points each with a different person, right? Like, so
Hmm.
that was really like, well, hold on a second. Like, so who's the customer actually understand who he's dealing with, right?
Yep.
And I came from a time where we didn't want like I was selling IT consulting services in the 90s, and instead of full-time recruitment, which most people were kind of on the mindset, we were trying to sell our company and like the solution. And he only wanted to buy a VB developer, right, or a Java developer. And I said, well, hold on, what do you need to do? And then he would like test my guy, and I'd be like, no, 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 no. We're going to manage him, and he's going to write the code and get you done what you need to get done. Don't
Hmm.
worry about giving him a test. You're not hiring him full time. This is my guy. He's consulting, right? We had to change the mindset back in the 90s. And so it became like this you know game. I didn't understand, like, is the customer, who comes first here? Is it this
Hmm.
process or is it the customer and the way he wants to buy, right? And I
Yeah,
couldn't understand it. And what boggled my mind even more was the fact that a lot of people then all of a sudden started to say, oh, we need to go back to this and back to that. I'm like, dude, take a look at 90% of the rest of the world
yeah.
and other sales business. Like, I have friends of mine who don't use an SEP,
Hmm.
don't even know what a parallel dialer is,
Yeah.
right? And manage millions of dollars worth of business, millions. Okay. And in like millions of dollars worth of business in transactional sales too,
Hmm.
right? Which would be data heavy, and they still do it on a traditional CRM, and they don't have anything else but relationships and the understanding of the full cycle, and the
Hmm.
specialization of the roles is what drew me in. And then what I heard was, oh, I don't, nobody's using the phone. And I'm like, fuck that. I'm like, I use the phone. I'm like, I could teach you how to use the phone. And that's when I started to kind of
Hmm.
put it out there and try to help people and understand. And so, but I came from, back in the day of where only the phone, and the phone book. all right?
Mm-hmm.
And you had to really go and ask questions. Like the best kind of person was somebody who knew nothing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
everyone's like I always deal with SDRs coming on the team, and they're like they're hesitant, right? They want to learn everything, or they want to know everything before they start talking. I'm like, you don't need to have every answer, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so I think the model, right? This model that I ran into, I was like, wow, this is weird, you know. But it has its good points and its bad points. I'd love to get your take on where you came from before that, and how you envisioned when you kind of saw it happen in 2011. You were like, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I know. We're seeing like the commercial repercussions of that model now being so saturated that what you and I know to be true prior to that is, as part of a business development role, no longer exists in those specializations of those roles. So
Right.
I came from a boiler room where no, hang on, let's go back even further. I came from,
Well, you can't go back before the Boiler Room movie existed because
well,
they didn't know what
I've got
that name
the hair for it
was.
today, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's go back even further
Yeah.
where I started to see how these feedback loops would work, and then I realized that's what I was being taught later on in the boiler room. So I
Yeah.
started in like high fashion while I was still trying to play football, and that's a whole nother story. We can talk about that another time. But I quickly elevated to be like an area sales manager for a high fashion label, which was really expensive suiting and shirts, right? I
Mhm.
realized because the stuff was so expensive, we couldn't just rely on foot traffic. This is like pre-email. This is pre like
Yeah.
pamphlets. This is like
Yeah.
there was no marketing, man. There's a marketing
Yeah.
department, but I have no idea what they did. And
Yeah.
so I'm looking at it going, okay, so we're expecting people to come in off the street and buy a suit for $3,500 and a shirt for $400. I don't think that's going to happen as well as what we think it is. So over time, I thought, okay, how could I build like a category of demand for this product? So I taught my store managers to keep a black book. You'll laugh, like an exercise book.
Well, I just want to
Yep.
stop you for 1 second. My
Mm-hmm.
older brother, Neil, you might be watching this. He is a clothing haberdashery, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the last 35 years, has made men's suits custom,
Well,
sells
hang on.
35, 45, $8,500 suits,
Yeah.
travels all over the metropolitan area. But I appreciate that because he ran a company called the Custom Shop, which had
Mm-hmm.
110 stores around the world. And he was their senior vice president of sales. And the old man sold the business to a corporation that tore it apart. My brother was out of a job after 19 years working there. But yes, I just wanted to interject that because I understand that high level, high fashion
Yeah.
business. My brother
Yeah.
spent most of the 80s or 90s and 2000s selling that stuff.
Well, I guarantee Neil would have been doing this. So here's the story of what I figured out, and I guarantee if he was that successful, this is what he did.
Yeah.
I went to the store managers. I got them to have exercise books, like notepads. And when Mark comes in and says, hey, man, I'm like a 44 regular. I like these types of cuts. I buy these types of shoes. I buy these types of belts. And every time that the design team would make that type of stuff, I'm like, you guys, what are you going to do? You're going to call Mark and say, in 2 days, you would not believe the stuff that's going to come through our door. What we're going to do, if you can get down here for 2 hours, we'll do a closed door event. And you can have the first look at what this looks like. So I got them to do that for categories, right, for each of the VIP buyers, and then just call them up. So every time that we had like a different range come through, we call all of those people. We did a closed door event. We make more from that in the first 2 hours than we did for 3 weeks of the store sales. Well, I think it was about 2. And
Well, it's two different models. You're generating that demand, bringing them in, lead magnet, whatever you want to kind of put it in other terms, right? Whereas retail is like you're waiting for the person to come in off the street. And in the high fashion haberdashery business, I mean, my brother wasn't just sitting there. Like if he's always working his list of customers in some way, shape, or form, touching them with things like his social media is off the charts, because of it too. So
yeah. But yeah, I guess even back then, this is like 2000, right? I got them to write a catalog of what Mark likes what he would like for next time, all of these types of things, and like a profile of catalog of what Mark likes, right? So then you fast forward when I got into big finance. No, hang on, no, I did high pressure gym sales, head of business development in between that, and we did the same thing. So think about that as like a town hall of what we would do in SDR land, right?
Yeah.
That's like a webinar. Today, that's a webinar. It's a closed door event. It's the same principle.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So in high pressure gym sales, my team was tasked with doing like one-on-one sales and referrals. I'm like, fuck that. What we're going to do is we're going to find out where all of these people, where they work. We're going to call those employers and ask, what would you like to give your valued employees, and are you doing employee benefits? So then their employer comes down and brings 50 people. Then we sell to a room of 50 instead of just one at a time. Okay, then fast forward that. So we keep the catalogs of that. I went to big finance, and then I realized that was how we went. Like, we just literally went to market. We didn't try to sell them. We just asked Mark, like, just wondering, man, like, no, not trying to sell you anything, but who are you currently with for XYZ, and like, how are you solving that problem? And then we just listen. Okay, well, is there anything that you don't like about it? Oh, okay. So that would, if you were going to go to tender, would you want to change that, or the winning tender need to contain what you've just said? Awesome. Are you in a fixed term contract? Or what type of time frame would that look like? And that became, from big finance, they were already calling that catalog in the market, right? So that was the same process from fashion to high pressure gym sales to big finance. And then I went and worked in large contract acquisition, like high ticket placement on talent management, right? And then I realized, like, Bill Pollock's team in Canada for Drake were doing this since like 1955. You'd call up the companies and you'd find out who they're with, what they like, what it would take to get the national supply contract. When that would go to tender, then you take the feedback loop over to marketing and you say, marketing, hey man, could you build us some of this? Could that be like this educational content mixed with these known objections of what they've said? And then I'll go back to them. Now, the large component of why that worked across all these industries was, one, you had a buy-in to go back. Two, you had a time frame. Three, you knew it was going to wait, what it was going to take to win the deal. So this was just obvious, man. So fast forward to like 2011, when all this stuff started getting specialized, people, then SDR land was like, hey man, do you want to take this meeting? Or email was like, hey man, is this the best channel for you to take this meeting? Boom. I'm like, there's no rapport, and there's no barrier to entry, and there's no
well, that is the barrier to entry, the poor the poor outreach.
Well, you know what I mean? Like, so this all changed and it all went the other way, and now we see the commercial downstream repercussions of the people doing those specialized roles are realistically just kicking the can down the road, because then that forces people to take a demo, that forces an AE to do extra discovery, which is what we were doing over here. So we instead of shying away from the national contract discussion, we leaned into what the contract would take, how we'd get it, what the time frame was, and then we built it out with marketing to win the deal. We go straight to the deal room, and then we say, this is what it would look like to work with us. So as you've described, it just seemed like weird stuff to me, man. I was just like, so you're telling me they do none of the work but get all of the fruit? So I'm like, tell me what's going on here. So I think now, like, in terms of, as your heading here says, like, we're seeing the commercial repercussions of a whole sector of the market of like sellers, marketers, and C-suites that have no idea what we're saying because they never saw what it was like before. Like, that was all part of business development's role, is you would go and find out all of the stuff from the market. You'd find out what it took to win. You'd know if the national supply contract was even more valuable.
I think problem today, I think part of the problem today now is that I think they want to express those things, like they want to know those things, but instead of organically going and getting that information, as we say, from the Gipper themselves, they're trying to use AI and other things to put the pieces together, right? And guess. And that's okay, I guess. You know, like, I haven't really worked in this capacity where I have had, 1,000 reps, where I understand that, some of the technology just is, it's required, right? Otherwise you can't manage it all, right? And so, but even in the technology I've taken advantage of, and in the small capacities I've been in, upwards of, 100 people, let's just say, I just always think that, you could find out so much more if you just make the call and use that as your, so they say, well, that doesn't scale, right? Like the VCs, which is really where the original, thing was. I know you kind of looped it in, but the VCs, what they cared about. In fact, you wrote this or something I read that you wrote word for word. I don't know if I'm saying it verbatim, but it was, where they, because of what they were demanding, they were looking at, and they were stupid in thinking this too. It's like, oh, I just want to see 150 meetings on the calendar, and I'll be okay with it. And I take a meeting with that CEO, and that's what he tells me. And then we have drinks, and we go our separate ways, and I get in my Lamborghini and I drive away. I don't care. I don't know if that's really the case, but for all intents and purposes, that's what and they forced those numbers, and then it was all like, this is what came from above. Oh, you have to do this many and this many and this many, and it made them go after it. Like, I'll tell you what, and I work for a company who actually gave us $50 for every meeting. Meeting held? Yes, meeting. It became meeting held. At first, it wasn't. I was like, what? Yeah. Yep. Now the meeting, I could definitely call somebody up and talk them into a meeting. I mean, that's easy, right? But it was about, what do those meetings really mean, right? And I think, some of the effects on sales and the process and the mindset and the thinking has been, meeting. Oh, I got these meetings. If I could talk to more people and I could use this technology, then I should probably get more. I'll be able to get more meetings, right? And meeting. And look, I'll admit I've talked some people into meetings. I mean, it's just kind of like almost not on purpose, really. Sometimes it's more just subconscious. Well, and I backed into meetings, like into maybe meetings I've even started to disqualify that person. That's the other thing that people don't do. Like, why take the meeting if that person's not ready to talk about it, right? Oh, well, let me just introduce you to my. That was the other thing I didn't understand. I'm going to touch on this really quick. These SDRs, they would call up, they would do their thing, and I'm not even going to get into that. That's a whole different topic and a different person. But the way they approach it, and then when they figure out that the person has a pain, not if whether or not that person even has a pain that they solve, maybe it is. But they think it is because they say, oh, do you have this pain? Does it resonate with you? Oh, yeah. Oh, so let's set up a meeting. And then when they set the meeting, they say something like, I'm going to introduce you to my AE, which the person you're talking to may not even know what an AE is. So, like, I don't even know why you say that. And then they say, oh, and now it's like, wait a minute. I just met you 45 seconds ago. Now you're passing me off to somebody else. Never understood that. Now, if that happens, I've come to realize, and I've worked in this capacity, I've tried to make it better for myself. It's okay. And the way you do it is when I pitch a meeting, as the SDR, I'm saying, hey, listen, it sounds like this might actually be something we can have a conversation about based on what you just said, X, Y, Z. Why don't we do this? Let's reconnect at a time that's a bit more convenient where maybe, you could share a little bit more about, those problems. And, I could tell you a little bit more about how we go about solving it. All right. And then they set the meeting with me. Now, just because when I get on that meeting, which that never happened, they always talked about an SDR handoff, which is what? A quick Zoom chat or a quick Slack chat with the AE. And he goes, okay, tell me about this meeting. And, the guy's like, well, he's interested in our product. Oh, great. What pain point did he tell you about that was like, they don't ask that question, right? And so they get on the call. And then the AE, if that's their process, he may even launch into. I've literally seen a kid work for a company called, I won't say it, and I seen him get on the discovery call. I set it up, and he literally launched up his screen before he even said hello. And I was like, okay, I'll see you later. Click. Like I got off because that's what we did, like that handoff. So I created a handoff where I'm actually on the call, and I gracefully say, hey, I wanted to introduce you to my partner. He's really the expert here. I'd just be a fly on the wall. And plus, he's really better looking. So you might enjoy hanging out with him a little bit more. So I'm going to follow up with a thank you email. And you have a great Thanksgiving. And I get off the call, right? What that does is two things. It solved the problem of no-shows, right? Like, that was the other thing I kept hearing. Like, everyone's like, no show. And I talk about it too. People no-show me. I mean, it's just the nature of the business, right? But it's like if you're on the initial call and if your AE is being handed this note, this meeting that and you don't even give him any information to get excited about even, and he's got to do a discovery from scratch, and that person is 3 minutes late, he's probably going to hang up, and then he's going to blame you. And I said, well, if you're on the call, then you can get that person on the phone. Hey, John, I'm on the line here. We had a 2:00 Zoom call. Can you still make it? Oh, no, I'm really got tied up. Excellent. Well, hey, let's reschedule. And you can reschedule right there. Nobody was doing that. And I was like, okay, those are easy fixes, right, for the challenge that you have in this model. And so what I was forced to do was, like, I listen and listen and listen, and then I had to build these workarounds, until the model changes completely, right, and goes full cycle, or at least puts the right people in the right roles, right? So let's talk about that, because we're getting to the halfway point here. Sales and marketing silos, and how can it be dismantled? The one thing, again, that I couldn't understand, and it probably still happens in most of the companies I used to work for, but sales and marketing were completely different. They had completely different metrics, had completely siloed, especially some of the big, huge billion-dollar companies I work for. It's just the way it is, right? They're retail-based, right? Sherwin-Williams is retail, but, I couldn't understand how the feedback loop wasn't occurring, right? And so my partner Josh and I, we talk about this all the time. When you're serving ads and you're serving programmatic campaign display campaigns, and you're getting this first level, second level data coming back from the internet, that stuff tells you something. I'm not saying it's accurate 100%, because people log on the websites all the time that they don't mean to, but take that data, serve data to people, get the feedback, right? But when I say feedback, it's like, now you tell sales, hey, this is what we're seeing people resonate with, right? And vice versa. Oh, I'm pitching this. So let me give you an example. People say sometimes email doesn't work, right? Well, there's a lot of things that don't work with email, but when email does work, this is how it works. People don't respond to email, right away, or even at all sometimes. But it works, because you know how I know? Because when I call people and I use the same terminology, the same phraseology that they saw in my ad, or they saw in my email, or both, or in my LinkedIn post to them, or my DM, or whatever, right? Now they're talking to me on the call, opening up about what's going on in their world. Right. And I say, hey, this sounds like we could probably have a meaningful conversation a little bit longer at a time that's a bit more convenient. Why don't we get together next Tuesday at 3? How's that sound? Great. And then they say to me, did you send me something? Did you send me? I got an email about this just the other day. Yeah, that was me. I don't even say anything. I just let them talk. And they say that. And that's why I got the first 30 seconds of the call to happen, because something that I said, right, they recognized it. It was something that they saw. It's like sending people, a lot of times they'll send a LinkedIn connection request. They'll look at, oh, should I send this to this person? They'll look at them. They go, oh, they got under 500 connections. I'm not going to send them the request. Why wouldn't you send them the request? Even if they're not on LinkedIn, they're going to get an email. They're not getting emails from anybody else, because obviously they only have 500 connections. But they're going to see an email that says somebody sent them a LinkedIn connection request, not 3 people, just you, because only you're sending it to them, right? And so they see that. They don't know what it is. They delete it. But it rings in their head, right? It's a touch point that people don't realize could be powerful, right? And so they just abandon email, or they abandon this and they abandon that. And they don't realize that everything works holistically, right? That's why you need marketing. And you need sales. Now, I get why the silo was created. Everybody's looking at it as a metric and a compensation piece, right? But I'd love to get your take on that.
All right. Yeah. All right. So, firstly, the metrics change the tools, and the tools change the behaviors. So, if you look at what you and I did before 2011, marketing existed from our feedback from on the ground with in-face personal conversations, or us doing the business development on the calls, finding out, cataloging the market information. We'd literally walk over to the marketing team. Hey guys, could you help me build this? They'd build us that. And then we're like, okay, now can you account map everyone else that's just like them? And we'd do that. And then we'd call those people and go, hey, Mark, I know you don't have time to talk to me right now, but we've found this. Would it be okay that we show you? Boom. And you'd send them stuff. Back then it was probably just a shitty PDF or death by PowerPoint, but it was still something. And then we just follow up the people that we sent stuff that should resonate with all of those personas, right? That no longer exists because marketing is tied to the metrics, which became the tools, which became the behaviors. So they know if you talk to a good marketer, they know 3/4 of the no intent lead gen that they're creating, because that's what they're tasked to create, won't work. They know that they want to be getting the live feedback from customers, voice of customers, market validation from us, but that's not what exists in most organizations, right? So that's how we fix it. We go back to the measure being completions, catalogs, info gather, and then we walk it over and we give the sheet of this information to Mark's team in marketing, and Mark builds the stuff. And then we go to the CEO. See, when we did this loop between us getting market validation, marketing built us the stuff, these guys went to deal room, this is how many went to contract. That's the solve. But to fix that, we've probably got a twofold problem, bro, because the SDR AE machine can't handle that because it's not how they're measured, and they don't have the skill set to do it. So I don't know where you originally came from in your career, but in my career, in big finance, large contract acquisition, these types of things, those people first came from customer success. So they got the commercial deal pack from the business development full cycle person. And in the deal pack, they knew, okay, Mark's team has been credit approved. Mark's team has legal process here. It says clause, these ones are approved. It says, here's the quote of the price. Here's the annual contract value. Here's their expectations. This is how many times that rep over Sandy here has to go see this customer. Right. That person then does that for 2 years. Then they go into a pool and then they apply to be in business development. When they get there, they already know how to market gather the information because they know what's in the deal pack from processing them for the last 2 years. So that's the fix, right? In my eyes, it's very, very clear. But people look at me like I'm speaking some foreign, like, Venusian.
Well, what about the compensation piece? What about the compensation piece? Because you're working on, like, you know, with two different salary type employees at different levels, and is that misaligned?
Yeah. Well, so on top of the fact that the metrics change the tools, which then change the behaviors, we've also got to realign what they're getting paid and compensated on incentivization on each of the touch points, right? So as you touched on earlier, I've seen firsthand meetings set $50. I've seen that up to $500. You can imagine what happens, right? Yeah. And then if you go to big finance, you're like, hey, man, I got this national supply contract. I should get like a $5,000 bonus for pushing this across. Inside of that contract, they're going to have some B2C buys. I've done 50 contract acts for those guys. I'm going to be in the cash. And then the contract falls over, and then those guys still get paid, and then the contract's upside down, right?
What do you think about, because you keep saying big finance, and my middle brother, I talked about my older brother being in the clothing business, but my middle brother was a finance guy. He traded government bonds on Wall Street just up until shortly before 9/11. Thank God, because his entire desk went to Cantor Fitzgerald, which was in the top of the World Trade Center, and he lost a lot of good friends that day. But he used to talk about kind of a pod type of environment there, where you'd have like a deal originator, you know, a guy like me, a guy that's going to be making the calls, making the contact, making the touch points. And then you had, for lack of a better way to say it, an AE or sales engineer. That's not what they called it, but it was like the sales rep or the sales guy, you know, and then the trader, right, who's actually going to execute it, who has the license. He's going to actually execute whatever portfolio transaction the customer wants. But it was like a pod-like and type of look at it. And I always thought, you know, look, if you're gonna, instead of completely dismantling the AE model, you know, SDR AE model, because these companies, these people are so used to it, why don't you have maybe something like an SDR, an AE like role, but it's more of like that SDR, expand those responsibilities, make him more of that kind of almost full cycle there. And then you have that support sales engineer, and you have that, you know, you could bring those people in, but that one person are always involved in each step, each touch point, I think. And I think you can incentivize everybody that way. Now, if the pod is essentially focused maybe in a particular vertical, then marketing, then you can have that particular, marketing person. You don't have to have the centralized marketing team. Why don't you have, like, just like you have a rep, why can't you have a marketing person in that group too? Like, why do they have to operate independent? Why can't they be paid also? Very much like you're splitting this stuff between SDR and AE somehow on the balance sheet. So why not throw 2 other roles in there and figure out how to make those deals more profitable so you can afford to do that? But like, that's the other thing too. Forget about it. People discounting, that's a whole nother mess. But it's the feedback loop still, like, so, because you're not going to change, you're never going to, like, I always thought, well, wow, that sounds like a great idea. And then I put that out there one time, and I got a lot of feedback on it. A lot of people said it was tried before. I was like, yeah, it's worked too. I don't know what you're talking about. So, but like, just to break it down and to, like, it's a culture change, right?
Yeah. But if you look at, like, to answer your question directly, what we've built in CRO school solves that problem, because we give you the tools and the calculators to do that. But really, we've just leaned on what happened before, man. Like, it used to be divided by the contract value, divided by the spend over a duration of time, divided by the departments that worked on it, divided by the people. And it was flat and it was fair. So that's what happened, man. Like, marketing wasn't chopped out of the loop. The CSM wasn't chopped out of the loop. Everybody got a piece of the pie as long as the contract went to land and expand. It wasn't this, like, 2 people show paid out before the contract goes to being banked and build revenue. It wasn't, like, the contract's being upside down, or actually we can't service this because they want 3 on-site reps, which exceeds the value of the contract. There was none of this shit. Like, it was literally straight down the line. Like, if it goes to plan, straight as straight can be, that's how it was.
But do you think it's become so bloated with all of that it's unfixable?
Well, they're going to have to change the measurements, man. Like, yes, because now if you look at, like, how we operate to service the amount of contacts, to get to meetings set, to get to opportunities open, to get to deals on, you need more people to calculate all of the no's to find those needles in a haystack to find the yeses, right? What happened before, when they did the cataloging and info gathering and did bring marketing into the fold and brought the CSMs into the fold and had things like a live quoting day, which is like a big presentation or a big demo, all of these things happen end to end with a lower acquisition cost, because it was the one person that had the skill set to do it through the whole thing, right? So one BDM, like you said, could do all of those things,
right?
Versus now you've got 3 people across that function that might not necessarily not be able to do it, and their load of trying to find the needle in the haystack so high, you need more of those people for each of those calculations. So I think we're going to go back to go forwards, man.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on that in your post also about, just like what most people are looking at, like the demand capture versus demand generation conversation is, again, another thing that we could talk for hours on, and we've already touched a little bit on it. But it's like, let's all fight for the same 3%, and then of that 3%, the only 6% that might even answer their phone, that, like, and so on and so forth, right?
Yes.
And so when you could actually touch some people, use some other resources, and touch that other, I think you guys came around 21%, the other 21% that you might be able to persuade to thinking that there could be a better solution out there. There is that. I don't think because you have a name, like, there's this thing about, like, when they call people and the person says that they have a problem, and they pitch the time, right? Like, they don't even ask about it because they're so conditioned to not do any kind of discovery, right? And if I did that, and I have done that, what I find is you get a lot of meetings, but you get a lot of tire kickers, and then you get AEs pissed off, and you get and in my capacity, what I do is SDR outsourcing. That would only piss my customers off, and they don't want meetings like that. They expect better meetings, right? And so, we deploy various online data tactics and some technologies that allow us to kind of touch people across, like 98% of the internet, and get and be able to score those leads, and then, really drive the most potentially profitable meetings if those people are ready to have a conversation. And you spoke earlier a little bit about this. You kept saying, it's about gathering that info. Sean Cease is another guy. I'm sure you're familiar with him. He uses the term, and I've been repeating it, and I hope he doesn't mind, but it's a data curation event, right? Is what he calls it. And, SDRs that talk people into meetings are just, really downstream are causing more problems, and it just makes everything look so bloated. That's why it's so funny. I look at some of the folks that came from some of these big, like, unicorns that came around in the last, few years, and they're like, you look at their stats from their first few months as SDRs at 450% of target. I was like, well, there was no precedent before, so what was the target?
They're saying, hey, I'm calling from Unicorn X. Would you like our stuff? And everyone says yes.
Yeah, I'm not going to doubt that some of those people are really good at what they do, right? And they have merit in some way, shape, or form. But, when you have those names, so I just want to throw this out here because, I think it's, again, a testament to not only the backwards nature of how the sales process works in the tech sales world, but just the way even people talk to each other, right? I've been pushing this on everybody. When I talk to someone, hey John, or hey Adam, it's Mark Mack, how's it going today? And like, for years people saying, you can't say that, you can't ask how are you. I'm not asking that person how they are. Understand what I'm asking them. First of all, it's very natural. That's how I would say to my friend, yo, hey, how you doing? And it's like, how's it going? All you're asking them is like, what's on their plate? How's it going? What's right in front of you? Like, if they say, I got a fucking hot dog with all the fixes in front of me, I'm gonna be like, I'll let you go. That's the other thing. You got to read the room. Like, I always learned when I went to this was the biggest sort of transition I had, right? Like, when I was for years, for almost 20 years, face-to-face sales. I'd walk into people's office. Cold, when you walk into an office, probably if it's somebody who's a decision maker and has been there for a while, they probably moved in, if you know what I mean, right? And I could go into that office, and within 15 seconds of scanning the room or less, I can know a whole lot about them, and things that I could leverage in the conversation to build rapport, right? And now it's like, how do you do that on the phone? Well, first, don't say, I'm Mark from SDR Insider, right? Because as soon as you say a company name, right, people put you into a box, right? But are you really, do they know your company? Are you from Google? Are you IBM? Why the fuck do you have to say your name, right? There's no reason for you to say the name of the company. And when you say the name of your company, what happens? Even if you get that conversation going because you're so talented or you have a really compelling value proposition, the point of it is that they immediately, even when you do go through that, they're thinking, oh, this is a company. If not now, they're trying to sell me something at some point, and I don't have the mindset for it. So you're already starting off in a minefield. I can't tell you, people say they can't do it. Every single phone call that I make today, yesterday, and for the last 4 years, I never say my company name. And when I did, I mean, I used to work for multiple companies at the same time, right? And I would use the wrong company name and pitch them a different kind of software. And at the end of the day, and then I'd say, I'm Mark from this company. And they'd be like, didn't you just say you're, oh shit, yeah, no, that's our parent company, Admittingly, no, it wasn't as bad as that, but it was like, you don't have to say your company name, right? Because it doesn't matter. all you're trying to learn at the very beginning is whether or not you got the right person on the phone. But as soon as you say you're from this company and they hang up, now you don't know if you even reached the right person,
Yep.
right? So I dropped the company name. That's like the first part of it, right? And then they say, oh, well, they're always going to ask you who you are. Like, oh, well, who are you? And I said, well, I told you I'm Mark Mack. And I go, look, the reason I was actually calling is, and then you get into it, right? And 9 times out of 10, they forget, right? So it's not about the company that you're from, because it doesn't matter if unless you're from Gong or, like, or something that's what you're selling it on. Now, interestingly enough, though, it depends on who you're working for. Now, you say you've been in different industries and businesses, right? Some small companies, like I have a business, my partner just bought a bus company business in Ohio. And that business is one of like 3 major players in the market, right? So actually calling school districts and saying I am Mark from BSI is an advantage. And it's weird for me because I don't normally do that. I don't like to say that. And when I did it, people actually are having a better, they know who we are. So again, 9 times out of 10, 99.9% of the time, people don't know your company name, and there's no reason to say it. But it's, again, a marketing thing. Like, so that feedback loop, if I'm talking to my marketing people and telling them what's resonating maybe over the phone, they can incorporate that into the marketing. Every morning we sit down, my partner and I, with our marketing guy, and we're talking about letter campaigns and this campaign. And I'm telling him, hey, I got on the phone with a guy yesterday, and he was saying this and this, and I think, and we diatribe about it, and we say, oh, hey, that could be some good content there, and then you put it out there, right? There's no magic bullet, right? Let's face it. And if you don't do all of these things, you're not gonna, you're just doing yourself an injustice. It's not about the technology. There is that, but people, process, and then technology, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'll send you some stuff after this, and you'll like some of the grabs. I cut some stuff yesterday from CRO School, the portal, and I'll show you. Yeah.
Look, I think what you got going, it's a necessity almost, right? Like, there's a lot of people that could use the help, that could use the understanding, the acumen, and then it's ironic. It's like you're focused on that kind of very high level. People who actually are aspiring to maybe be a CRO. Like I said earlier, I think CROs who are already out there could probably take a moment and get into your school and do that and learn some things. I like seeing all these specializations. I mean, I in terms of coaching, that is, because I think there's a lot of room for that. When we were growing up in the industry, we didn't have these mediums to access or to tap into and say, hey, you know what, I'm really struggling with this. You could almost literally at some point you're going to be able to Google AI or whatever, LinkedIn, and be like, find me a coach that does this specific. I mean, you could probably already do that, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm looking for somebody with expertise in this, I really need to get to this level, because there's always those levels too, right? Like, I might be actually good at really helping people in those initial conversations. The irony is I think, and you talked about it a little bit, which is, putting the right people in the right roles. Somebody like me, I've got 30 years of experience in the real world, and I'm making top of funnel calls for the last 4 years for 40 different companies, because I start conversations, and it's about, and I don't know where else it comes from, but that old way I did it face to face, or otherwise. And it's like, I feel like, people, there's so much pressure and there's so many of the wrong things being thrown at people, and the wrong metrics and the wrong this, and it's been going on for too long. And you know what? I really do believe, though, that there has been a change, and that people want change, and that people want to move to better sales processes. And the crazy thing is AI and the tech bug is still banging on the door and making people kind of not do the right things in some cases, and not from a process perspective, a workflow perspective. And they're relying on that tech, thinking, okay, this is going to be my answer. And the sad thing is that every Joe now, even who don't even have tech coding experience, can build a sales management tool using AI and sell it. And it's commoditized that space. I'm waiting for, when the major players, have the really, jacked up, and it's like you just literally say, Susie, can you write me I guess you could do that now. You can ask ChatGPT to do whatever you want. I've tried, but sometimes it like spazzes out. It says, I can't do this. You got to be a little bit, tell me it in a little different way. And I change it and it still has a problem. And I'm just like, the human touch will never, I can't believe how many of those, like, it's going to, SDRs, I believe the role will change and has been changing, right? Yeah. And it doesn't mean it's going away. It just means it's going to look different, like we just talked about. I don't think it's going to be completely destroyed and like people are going to lose their job. Like, I think it's going to change before any of that, and I've seen really great AI tools talk to, people, things that talk and, but it can't do the kinds of things that I can do on the phone or that anybody else could learn to do on the phone. But before we get really deep into the last few minutes of the hour, I want to learn, what is Adam's hack? Look, man, you've got CRO school, which, by the way, and the playbook, right? It's got that on the ribbon here. So we're going to give that away, or you can give it to me, and I'll give it away eventually. You got CRO school, you got the sales side of it. You've got other endeavors. You're doing content. It's Wednesday or it's Thursday for you, but it's like a lot on your plate. I didn't even ask. I don't know personally if you're married and have children or whatever, but whatever family. I'm sure you have family because you came from somewhere, right? But it's how do you do it all? Like, what does it take? What does it take for Adam to get over the week?
I think with like what we all went through in the pandemic, we just like realized to get as much of the structure of your day out of the way first to leave time for the most important things. So for me, that could be literally I wake up at 5 o'clock and I write back to everyone on LinkedIn. And then I'll think, okay, from that, does that tell me from customers I spoke to yesterday or the amalgamation of people that wrote back to me? Should I write a post about that? Right? Then I'll just whip that out. So that's done. 6 a.m. I'm in the gym. That's happening, right? I'm at my workspace by 7 a.m. and then I can set up my day. So
hold on a second. Is the gym in your house?
Not quite.
Okay, it's right outside your house?
Yeah.
All right.
It's okay. By American standards, it's very close.
Because I don't know anybody that could go to the gym at 6 and be out by 7 unless they live right there.
So I became very efficient through all my training I trained to be a professional sports person my whole life, man. So even if I give 30 minutes of the best every day, then that keeps me pretty primed for days where I don't have anything on those mornings. So how I structure that now is that's pretty much the morning structure. I put aside, as I said to you, 2 hours each morning for people that want to maybe talk about how they want to collaborate with something or might want to invite me on a podcast and might want to ask me questions for their own content, right? Yeah. And then from there, I just literally go back to each day just building out what we've got to build out. George and I have done an enormous amount of work up until yesterday for CRO school. He had to put up with, I think, I'd say nearly 40 hours of our video, maybe.
40 hours of Adam.
Well, I've never seen anyone in my life be able to decipher and deliberate diligence on how to put all of those things into certain structures, like I've seen him in the B2B Playbook do. That is invaluable. Check them out, b2bplaybook.com. And they're check them out on Spotify. That's probably one of the best podcasts where you'll see the bridge of what marketing should be versus what's happening, right? From there, man, like that allows me to get most of the structure of the day done by lunchtime. So Perfect. It sounds like a whole lot when you said like you're working on these 3 different things and etc. But if you break it down into time blocks, it's not really.
Yeah, absolutely. Time blocking, definitely, something that, I kind of don't, I'd say I time block to the extent that I have certain hours of the day that I'm doing things just by nature of the light or, people working where I think it'd be critical, which ironically does change from a phone call perspective because, like if we're calling and we're talking with clients, potential clients that are in the trade services, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, I've spent a lot of time working for companies that support that industry, and we're talking to those kind of people, and it's great to talk to them at 7:45 in the morning, at 8 o'clock in the morning before they actually get to the job, right? Which I'm used to because I used to go and call on building engineers in Manhattan at 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning, right? So there's that different kind of thing. So that's really where my time blocking actually starts, right? I decide, okay, based on this customer and based on this, I think the best time to make phone calls would be at, these times, right? And so I'll block that off. Usually it's very common, even across all of them, is like 10 to 12, 2 to 4, is really the core times that I do make calls. But like I said, I could do 7:30 to 9. And what's great about that is, yeah, like I'll drop 2 meetings, and I know I have that out of the way, which allows me to focus on some other things. And I can put those things into the schedule as well. Usually there's meetings and other things, and then meetings I got to start. So that's always happening 1:30, 6:30, 3:30, 2:30, And so by nature, I think it almost time blocks itself. But as a CEO, founder, and whatever, I think it maybe almost takes more discipline because you can be more on the creative side. And like I could get launched into creative things that literally I only decided I was going to spend, till I say, oh, I'll work till 7:30 on this, and I start doing it, and it's like 10 o'clock when I look up, like video editing. Forget about it. I'll do video editing, and then 2 hours will go by, and I've only got like 30, 45 seconds, or 3 minutes of video that I cleaned up and did what I wanted to do with. And so it's like, wow, like. So I timed like naturally with that. Like sometimes the business, the work dictates that versus me kind of controlling it. But I think that's definitely a great point. I think, when you can do that and you can see your life in that way and you can get like the important things out of the way, it makes you just feel much better. Like when I get a meeting like that in the morning, I'm like so stress relief, it's like, okay, now I know I've got another opportunity we're staring at, potentially.
So I would try to do the similar things like 9 to 11. But what are your thoughts on like Friday afternoon doing like an hour and a half of power? Because no one will call on a Friday afternoon because they think everyone's out, right? That is the supercharged. That is the hack. That's the hack.
Most definitely.
3:30 to 5. Absolutely. That's when you call.
3:30 to 5, East Coast. I am always on the phone. And there's this other girl, Sarah, right? Sarah she's like a cold caller, AE, whatever. She just launched Selling Sarah. She lives in New York City, and she does videos on Friday afternoon of her cold calling. I used to cold call on LinkedIn too, but like I definitely I think that's a great time, and it's again a testament to like how you could begin a conversation, right? Like you're not John from company X calling because you work with I even tell people the word work. As soon as you use the word work you work with other companies, it triggers people. It triggers people in your head. There's a lot of psychology around this, and I'm teaching this to a few folks I'm coaching right now. It's like certain words are trigger words, and I'm not suggesting that we're not salespeople. We're trying to ultimately have a relationship and maybe conduct a transaction with this person. But it's about connecting with them and getting them to at least lower the barrier so that you can find out something from them that could be valuable. And so when you put all these landmines up front because you've been so conditioned and used to being, and you were trained, and you have a script written like that you were trained and embedded in your head. Trust me, I used to say I'm Mark from whatever company. Like I used to be Mark from Sherwin-Williams for so long that when I went to Impro, I used to say I'm Mark from Sherwin-Williams. I couldn't stop it. Like it was just like it was muscle memory, right?
Yeah.
So I understand everybody out there that's having that could have trouble with this by like eliminating the company name. But if you do it, it's like it's so liberating because I can't tell you when I say, "Hi, it's Mark Mack. How's it going today?" And they're like, "Good, Mark. How's it going with you?" Every single time, it has not stopped. I mean, look, I do. It's not true. Every once in a while, I'll get, "Who are you?" Right? But that's a sign. Read the room. That was my point before about walking into a place and being able to read the room and know everything about it. How do you do that now? You listen and you hear what you hear. You know, people say, "Oh, try to talk through the noise you hear in the background and see, at the very least, try to see, you know, if it's worth having another call with them." I'm on the fence with that one, but literally, it doesn't even matter because once you say whatever you say, they're gonna be like, nah, I'm not interested. Oh, send me some information. I can't think about that right now. Well, I just said that. You asked me to say what you want. Like, have the balls to say what? Because sometimes they'll say, right? They'll say, wait, just tell me why you're calling. Nah, it's all right, man. I'll see you later. I've literally said that and hung up. I'm not even kidding. I've just said my name so they don't know what company I'm from. That's another reason why you don't say your company name, right? Like, because they may remember that. They may not remember Mark, but they may remember the company name, right? Depending on what it is. And so I've said my name. Hey, it's Mark. Maybe not even my last name. And then they've said, I go, "Oh, but it sounds like I caught you at a bad time, huh? I hear all the noise in the background." No. I just stepped out. Just tell me what are you calling. Nah, it's all right, man. I probably have the wrong number anyway. Click. Right? Because they're not going to remember that. They're not going to remember that next week, right? Yeah. When you call and you have a totally different sound and you're like slow and you're calm, whatever. And so live to call another day, right? So many people, it's just like, yeah, you know, and my hack of the week is, you know, what I've been really successful this week for guys out there, everybody listening, is, you know, a lot of people say it's very hard to create content and post content consistently. And obviously, when you do live shows like this, you could have a lot more content to repurpose. So definitely, I'm trying to do more of that. But what I've been doing actually is when the idea hits me for a post, I write it in Authored Up. I use Authored Up on LinkedIn, and I actually just schedule it. You know. And what's really been mentally helpful to me and exciting for me, honestly, is being so far ahead in those posts. It's like I just thought of something really cool, and then I was like sad that I was like scheduling it for 2 weeks from now. Like I wanted to post it right now because I'm like the idea is in my head, and if I start to engage, and I'll probably do more of that, but it allows me to even still have those touch points, right? Yeah. I didn't automate it. I didn't use AI to do it. I wrote all of those posts, but I feel good about it. Now I'm able to engage on those posts when they go live, right? I'm not worried about writing another post. I'm not just writing that post and then I have to go back to work, so I don't have time to engage. So now I feel like when those launch, they're launching at good times where I can engage, right? And it's like, you know, I could keep adding on top of that. It's like getting ahead. Like I always learned, like that was the one thing, like in sales for me, being full cycle, because you had to do all those functions, you didn't have the scalability. Like I couldn't just set 100 meetings, right? Because then I'll do those 100 meetings and then I'll have no meetings, right? So it didn't work that way. But so I understand how the model could work in that, with that metric being examined. But it's like I couldn't do that much. So I had to find efficient ways to do each of those steps, you know, and you know, and then because it's so expensive, right, you had to make the most of it. But when you had those natural touch points, those face-to-faces or those conversations, and you really focus on the things that we ran into today, it really made sense then, you know, and it alleviated all of these other, like, so the whole model created such an unhealthy environment also for young individuals, young SDRs and sales reps who, you know, were just coming into the game. I mean, like, when I came into this, it was like, holy macaroni, like, are you serious? Like, why are people burning out? What, 3 months, 6 months. They like the first thing I heard Scott Lee say out loud was that the VP of sales has an 18-month lifespan.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What happens after 18 months, right? I couldn't wrap my head around it because all my life when I saw leaders do well, their team did well, they gained this momentum. They didn't go anywhere. They didn't just run off to the next role or the next management role somewhere. I mean, in some cases they did, but it was like they like. There's a guy that works for Sherwin-Williams. I admire the hell out of this guy. His name is Sal Fama, and he's kind of on LinkedIn. He might even I might send him this, but he's a guy. He was a sales manager at Sherwin-Williams. A field sales manager. He was on the course. The course is like you become a store manager, and then you become like the city manager over the stores, and you become a sales manager over the sales. And then you ultimately make it up to district manager, and then you kind of like sit back and relax for 10 years, right? And so, but he never wanted anything else. Once he got his team like moving like a well-oiled machine, he was like, I'm not giving this up, because he was making money. And year over year, he increased his team, grew his team. I think he has like 65 reps now, which is like insane. Which you couldn't even handle that back in the day without any technology, right? But it was like he's got a huge team, and he has not given up on that role because people love to work for him. He hasn't, like, his retention rate is crazy, like other people I know, and like it's just you retain people, you build momentum, and then I think that's the other really horrible thing that happened as a result of this model downstream is that you look at these resumes and it's like 3 months here, 6 months there, 9 months there, 4 months there, 8 months there. You were at that company for a year. I saw one guy's resume one time. It was he was at a company every year and a half or year and a month, right? And companies I worked for, when you did, like, let's say you did 10 million one year, you had to do 12 million the next year. It was like a 20% or 15% or 10% increase. And it was year over year. But if you go to a company that doesn't have any precedent, they're a startup, and you crush the target they give you, which was a target they had no idea how to set because it didn't exist before, and you crushed it, and they paid you a fortune of money, and then you left. And then you went and did it with another company. I don't know. I don't know about you, but I mean, maybe that person has some merit, and maybe he's good at what he does. I don't know him or her. But to me, on paper, that doesn't look good to me. To me, that looks like you can't repeat year over year. You don't have any wherewithal. You're going to come to work for me. I'm going to give you hopefully a high target or a conservative target. You're going to do really well, and then you're going to leave. How does that grow my team? Like, I don't understand that. And I saw this happening all across the industry, and it took me a really long time to understand why. And because back in the day with IT people, like people who had coding skills, they went from job to job to job every 3 months because every time they went, they got a new skill, they upgraded their skills, and they got paid more. It made sense. Yeah. And in this industry, maybe you went from SDR here to SDR there. You went to senior SDR. So what did you get, $5,000 bump in your salary or whatever? And it's like, and then they get into the AE role, or they go off and they never see them again, or they burn out. And it's like, I just don't understand. Where's the body of work? Like, that's what I always used to say. Where's your body of work? Show me a body of work that makes sense. And show me some failure, man, before you write a book. Because if you're writing a fucking book and you haven't actually failed at anything, I don't know.
Yeah, man. Anyway. But I think that a lot of what you said there about the hopping, man, is like a testament to the broken model, right? Because this didn't happen in those traditional industries. Like, your sales manager would be our age now, and that person has like 70 people going, that guy's awesome. I want to walk in their shoes. How do I get there? Right. And they're like, man, you keep doing what you're doing now for 5 more years, and you might just do that. And we don't see that now because the model's so broken. And as Scott Lee said, the tenure at the top is so short because they come in and they try to whirlwind change, but they're still stuck in a broken model that's never going to accept that change. So then they go off to the next venture, and then they've got the people underneath them that don't know what to do, and then they're still tasked to just burn contacts like this. and then they're burning out because they're doing that. The model's wrong. So that's what the fundamental takeaway of our conversation, or I can say from my side, is we know what good looks like because we've seen it and we've lived it, and we know what's broken now because we see it now. So let's just get back to some of that good stuff.
Some of the basic stuff, just the basic, just, and it's really not novel, right? And I think that a lot of people, a lot of blah 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 on LinkedIn, right? It's like, what I keep reminding people. I think you can appreciate this. There is a billion people on LinkedIn, a billion. It's over a billion, right? But it's a billion or plus, right? There are 135 million active daily users. 135 million, right? Okay. And people believe like it's the gospel Bible that it's happening everywhere in the world. A person who may have 50,000 followers, 100,000 followers, and may get even 300,000 impressions. Let's just say he gets 300,000. Let's give you that number. 300,000 impressions. Let's just say even if that is 300,000 people, I just said there's 135 million daily active users, right? And so do you think out of the other 134,975,860, whatever the number, the divisible is there, is that none of those people are salespeople or successful salespeople in their own right, in their industry and space, right? And they don't know how to manage businesses and whatever we talked about. It's like, just look outside a little bit. Go connect with your third level connections and go talk to people outside of your industry if you want. I think the biggest thing I talk to young salesperson about is just that. Don't get washed up into the old lingering PR model. Make decisions based on what, just you want to be original, look at other industries, I think there's a guy, Dale Dupree, right? Dale, interestingly enough, as much influence that he's had on the tech industry, he's not in tech sales. He sells copiers. That's his thing. He came from that trade or that old other industry type thing that I did and you did and whatever. And it's like, and he's doing some things which are unique, maybe old school, the paper, the letters and the things in the face-to-face. But, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about, like, you don't have to be so had these blinders. This is the way you were taught to do everything, more. Let's get a product like Smart Lead so I can send 5,000 emails so it looks like I'm only sending 5, right? You're still sending 5,000 emails. You're still burning your total addressable market to a certain degree, right? And it's just it goes round and round and round and round. And I think there are some folks like you and me and other folks out there that are advocating for this. I love the CRO school thing. I can't wait to get my hands on your playbook and some other stuff that you want to send me. I really thank you wholeheartedly for taking your Thanksgiving Day, even though you guys don't have. What do you guys? Do you laugh at Americans when we celebrate Thanksgiving? Because it's really a weird holiday.
I think. So I was in New Zealand for like 8 years, so I can't specifically speak. Of late, though, I think that Australia is more Americanized than what it used to be, and there's a lot more ties there. So I think a lot of the traditions now are now more widespread than maybe the Australians want to adopt or accept that they've adopted. Right. But yeah, but there's a lot of Americans that do live here. So yeah.
One day I hope to get there. I hope, or if any day soon you're in New York or New Jersey, I'd love to see you and hang out with you, man. I had a great conversation. I hope you enjoyed it too. Everybody, you see the B2Bplaybook.com. Go to there. Check out Adam Mandarovich. No, how do you say it?
Mandarovich.
That's right. You asked me what my last name
I did.
Was. And most people are probably listening or seeing it on the screens as Mark Mack. But my actual last name is Maklovitz, Chlovitz. A lot of my father, a funny story is he would actually, when he would call up and make a reservation at a restaurant, and by the way, this is his last name, right? You would think he'd know how to say it. he would say it so quick, like a rural New Yorker, like Mr. Maklowitz, who? Maklowitz. So they would start writing it out. They would spell it with a W, right? And it's a V-I-T-Z. But they would butcher it, right? And so we'd go to the restaurant, and back then they didn't have those beepers or those things that light up that tell you your food is ready or your table's ready, right? They called your name over the loudspeaker. The Machicola, the matcha, that's us. Yeah, that's us. Like we'd have to give up, not let them say it, right? Because they couldn't say it. And so for years, my mother, she was a daycare, she ran a daycare center, and so everybody in daycare, if you know anything about daycare, they say Mrs. and their first name. So it's like if your name is Stacy Hall, it'd be Mrs. Hall, you would think, right? But it's Miss Stacy. Everybody's Miss Stacy, and my mother was Mrs. Mack. Right. And I never realized well, maybe I should be Miss Mac, because she was famous Miss Mac, she was Miss Mac. And even though it wasn't her first name, because her first name was Marilyn. So she didn't want the kids calling her Marilyn, and, for the 1960s. Right. But it was Miss Mac. And so I adopted Mark Mack. And it's so funny because I don't really look at it as a brand per se, it's just I shortened my name because I don't like people trying to figure out how to say my whole last name. Or for that matter, trying to spell it for them, when you're not face to face and you're like, what's your email address? And it's like, okay, M-A-C-H. And I have a nasal sound to my voice. So my B's, C's, D's, E's, they all sound the same. So I have to use words. So I would say something like, my name is Mark Maklowitz. It's M-A-R-C-M-A-C-H, love without the E. Or I'd go L-O-V, like Victor, I like igloo, T for Tom, Z for zebra. It was just a fucking pain in the ass, right? And I had to do that every time, and I had all kinds of different ways to say it, and people would sit next to me and in sales floors and stuff, and they'd look at me like, what the fuck? How many? Because I would make people laugh doing that. That was the difference. Yeah. They would get, and then they would remember my name, and so you think, oh, why don't you use that? But it was too much, I just on lettering and headers and emails. I was like, Mark Mack, there you go. But yeah, thank you for telling me how to pronounce it, and I really do thank you for spending tonight with me. It's been great. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. You sound like you're out at the bar or something. I've been hearing a lot of noise.
Yeah, well, it's I'm on a sales floor, but there's an eatery downstairs.
You look like you're out in the on a cafe on a veranda at a restaurant. You got the heater thing.
Not just yet.
You got a pint in your hand. Oh, it's water.
Love it, man. I love. Thank you so much for the chat and having me on. And I appreciate it.
No, I bless you for taking the time out of your day. I appreciate it, even though, and especially since you say you only dedicate 2 hours out of your week to do this. So I feel very blessed. Anybody listening, go check out Adam. I'm Mark Mack. You can find us over at SDR Insider or on my local page. Stay tuned next week. We got another show coming, but thank you very much. And peace.
Thanks, man.